Welcome to Inside the Firm, a podcast dedicated to small business owners and hosted by entrepreneurs, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko. Each week, they take you on their journey of how to start, run, and grow a business by bringing you inside their architecture and real estate development firm. Get a behind-the-scenes tour of how these business leaders manage their clients and foster company culture while creating new and innovative projects. And now your hosts, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko.
Welcome to another special episode of Inside the Firm, AIA Convention 2019 in Las Vegas. Today I'm here with a very special guest, Robert Weygant, CEO and founder of Sumex Design. I've known Bob for about 10 years. If it wasn't for Bob, I don't think F9 would exist because he took a chance on us and we did a bunch of content creation for him from the get-go. So welcome today.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk about right away was tell us about Sumex and why you're like an entrepreneur hero to me because you're the man with a million irons in the fire, right?
Yeah.
And you've got a million legs to stand on, and the idea is, and you and I started working together in the middle of the Great Recession. And you had all this work, and it was like a godsend of, oh my God, I'm not going to starve. And so I've always looked up to you and tried to follow, your ideals of having that many irons in the fire, so that I could be the next Bob when it comes to not having to lay people off and being able to sustain, a nice lifestyle.
Yeah.
So where did that come from? How tell me about being like, what has always made you an entrepreneur? Just from birth?
Well, in some ways, yes, and I can actually give you a few interesting ones. When I was, I guess, in like 6th and 7th grade. No, actually, let's go before that. When I was in about 4th and 5th grade, I used to be able to ride my bike to school, and none of the other kids could. And I had a candy store on the way to school, so I would stop in and I'd pick up candy and I'd sell it at school. And this is 5th, 6th grade. That transitioned into, hey, you know what? I love music. I love going to concerts. So I started buying concert tickets. This is back in the day when you'd actually camp out for tickets. So I'm showing my age here. But, I used to camp out for tickets and then I'd turn around and I would scalp them. Yes, it was called scalping then. Now Ticketmaster's made it so it's not scalping. It's just reselling. And I made tons of money on that. And I loved the idea of being able to make money by doing things that nobody else wants to or can do. So you find the things that people are not capable or not willing to do that are relatively quick to complete. Like, you do a singular BIM program. Everybody jumped on Revit and they started making things and building buildings. And I dove into the family editor and never came out, because I saw that as a place that it was nebulous. Nobody really knew. There was no documentation on it. So I just spent years and years and years learning that family editor so I could be the top of it and I could be the one that people wanted to come to. Now, on top of that, I'd say the most important thing, though, is integrity. Without integrity, it doesn't matter. If you're trying to sell people something that they don't need, not every manufacturer needs BIM. Not every manufacturer needs specs. But when you try to sell them everything, you try to give them the farm, it just doesn't make sense. And without that integrity, your name's going to go south at some point. And I'm, every iron in my fire, I expect to live in perpetuity. I know that I've got a timeline for it to be profitable. Now, BIM, I completely underestimated it. I figured I had 5 years at most, and the window would close.
And when did you start? When did you start diving into the family?
2005.
Okay.
2005, 2006. And then from there, launched the ARCAT library in 2007, 2008. And it's been gangbusters ever since. I've built a ton of content for a ton of manufacturers, and it's been fun. Would
you say you built the most content in the world? About any single entity?
I don't know. I don't have numbers.
I would say
probably.
Yes. if you're trying to be modest, I will just say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with 800 manufacturers. The number of objects probably in the range of 40 to 50,000, 500,000 materials. Which, thank you for those, Lance. You are a big, big, big part of that. And I'm a believer in chances. I'm not the the guy that's going to say, well, you don't have the pedigree for this, you haven't done that. I don't believe in the good old boys club. I believe in people. I believe that everybody deserves a chance and a shot. And when I saw what you were capable of, and when I saw what you wanted to do, it intrigued me, and I fell in love with it immediately, because you had piss and vinegar, and that was what I like to see. And you're a hustler like me. You like to hustle, and you're not afraid to take the crappy job that nobody wants if it's going to pay the same.
Yeah, and they don't teach that. They don't. That's the thing. I think. I don't know if that's why you noticed. That in me is that you work with a lot of architects, and I think a lot of architects don't want to take any kind of jobs like that. They're a lot of them are very high and mighty, and they are the capital A architects, and they refuse to get down in the dirt and do what they got to do.
I like that, capital A architects. Because in a spec, that architect is capital A.
Absolutely.
No, so I think you're spot on with that. And it's kind of the blue and the gray. I went to college for engineering and then became a contractor. So I'm diametrically positioned across from the architects. They wear the blue and I wear the gray, or vice versa, because I'm both engineer and contractor. Neither of which really, they don't really jive in the architecture community all that well. I think that's going to change over time with the amount of design build. I mean, look at what you're doing. Your design build develop, the whole package.
Absolutely,
and that's awesome. And when you made the call and asking me if I wanted to put money in, if timing were better, I would have, set the whole thing.
Right, but we talked about the next one. The next one's going to be bigger, better. I would love to leverage your knowledge and talk about cost efficiencies. Things that you see, materials. I think it'd be a great collaboration.
I'm like full. One of the things that's kind of a pet peeve is redundant effort. If it can be automated, it should be, and waste. If you can eliminate waste by retasking, reusing, or just plain designing efficiently, you're going to be ahead of the game. I don't like dumpsters.
Yeah. So automation. I'm just going to jump ahead to one of the questions, because I've been asking everybody this. You're out of all the people that I've interviewed so far at AIA, you're one of the ones I really wanted to ask this question to. Okay. So with the exponential growth of technology we've seen in the last century, it seems that automation is inevitable. I mean, full automation, right? Are you at all worried that we could lose our professions to the automation, especially if it's specifically architects?
Well, architects, I think. I think they're diluting the nature of design, and making it more sterile. Because it's easier. You can automate design through generative iterative design, and you can get some really cool things out of it. But I think the overall feel of the building and the aesthetic, I think, will remain. I see engineering as more susceptible to automation, being somewhat eliminated by automation, more so than architecture, because architecture brings a level of art in there. And it's, I've seen a couple of commercials lately about, quantifying art, and it's interesting. But, because engineering is a pure science, it's numbers. It's ones and zeros when you break it down far enough, which means a computer can make the determination, thus eliminating all of the potential human error. And that's really what engineering is all about, is eliminating.
I'll be honest with you, man. If I could buy a plug-in and it was X amount of dollar, I don't even know, like a 5-figure number, and I could replace my engineer who won't answer the phone, I would do it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And
nobody has talked about engineers being automated on this podcast.
That's because we're at AIA.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm talking to a non-architect.
Yeah, well, you go to an ASCE group or an ASME. You go to ASHRAE. And yeah, people are going to be talking about that, because let's think about heating and cooling loads, calcs in this building. You can have an engineer do it and spend a lot of time and not call you back. Or you could have a plugin that is able to do all of the calcs based upon ASME numbers. That's all built in, fleshed out, and there. Now I'm probably going to piss off the engineer contingent, but I'm good at doing that. Historically I've always been known as the guy that will walk into the room with a hand grenade very, very calmly, casually, put it on the table, pull the pin, and just walk away as nobody even notices what I'm doing. And then just sit in the back of the room and watch.
Yeah. One thing you've always hung your hat on that I always liked that you talked about is like that you had Bill Gates'd it. In other words, you didn't go you didn't finish college, but
Right.
but here you are, very successful entrepreneur. Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more about that, and then also about like, we've been in society, we've been saying for a long time, you need to have a 4-year degree, and now we're dying for tradesmen as a result of this, and we've looked
plumbers.
down on plumbers are the bane of my existence right now. Yeah, absolutely. Can you speak about what do you think about like how we've trended in that way, how we've overcorrected?
Well, I think technology has pushed us into a situation where we are less knowledgeable. Now, we're less knowledgeable in hands-on learning. Personally, everybody learns differently. Growing up, I was a kinesthetic learner. I do things and I learn. I'm very much an autodidact. You give me something and I will figure it out one way or another. Not everybody's that way. I'm kind of unique in how I learn and how I do things, but I think that we have gotten away from. I think we've gotten away from the trades, and what it's done is it has increased the value of the tradesmen themselves, which I think should have gone up in the first place. I don't think they ever should have dropped as low. There is no shame in being a plumber.
No.
Some of my good friends are look, I was a roofer. Before I was here, I was a roofer. I dropped out of college because I wanted to be a contractor. So I had already been doing roofing for many years, so I stuck with it. I made a lot of money doing it, and I was happy. I don't think I would have been a happy engineer. I would go swing a hammer if my body would let me. But it's just, I still do my own work.
Right.
But I don't. I'm not going to hop up on a roof. I went up and cleaned my gutters last weekend, and I realized I'm not so spry on that ladder anymore. It's 32. I had the 32-footer out, which I haven't taken out.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was all the way extended, all the way up. And, yeah. But, no, the whole concept of the 4-year degree, I think it's a pedigree. I think it's a piece of paper that you spend a lot of money for that I think there are other ways to get. But it's not for everybody. Not everybody is going to be able to do it. You need a certain level of gusto of your own. It's the same kind of person that can work remotely. If you can't work remotely without being watched, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to sort of do this sort of learning on your own.
Yeah.
But I think the whole concept of the 4-year degree is overrated. I think some of the greatest architects and engineers in the world never had a degree. Never went to school.
Yep.
Probably never got past 6th grade.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, they're brilliant. They were brilliant minds, and were able to share their information and their knowledge and their love and their passion with others. And that's really, that collaboration and sharing, I think, is what makes people grow. Because it makes it easier to sort of, fake it till you make it, if you will.
Right.
Because, when you don't have that 4-year degree, you have to do that. You
Right.
have to fake it till you make
you're
it.
forced.
And what I did was I joined the EIEIO club. And I got some letters after my name. And after a few years, nobody cared that I didn't have a 4-year degree. I don't lie about it. I'm very transparent.
Well, that's why I was hoping you'd talk about it, is because I appreciate your transparency. I've always appreciated your transparency about it, and you just embraced it and owned it.
Yeah,
no fear, and just push forward.
Yeah, look, if you seem to have an issue because I don't have a 4-year degree, that's fine. But I'll tell you, companies like Autodesk right behind us, they've dropped their requirement. Google has dropped their requirement. They don't require 4-year degrees. I mean, my brother is another example. He dropped out of Stevens Tech in New Jersey. He was, computer engineering back in 1990. And he dropped out, started his own company doing web development during the dot-com boom. Lost everything in September 11th because he was in the J.P. Morgan building in New York City. Lost his entire everything, was just wiped out. So instead of starting up a new firm, Microsoft had been scouting him, and they said, "We want you." No degree, just experience and knowledge. And the more knowledge you can get everywhere you go, anywhere you go, the better you are going to be without that 4-year degree, because I think that knowledge is more valuable than what you know about Hemingway. Although I love Hemingway, I don't think that knowledge is going to translate into dollars.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. If you've started so many companies, one thing I would like you to talk about is if you could go back in time.
Oh, do you know about my bagel place?
No.
Have you seen Roly Holers?
No, talk about that.
Oh, yeah. I just started up a bagel shop.
Well, yeah, you're a bagel aficionado.
I am. I love my bagel. I'm originally from New Jersey, born and bred. Well, I was actually born in Mass, so I'm a Masshole, but also from New Jersey. Then moved to New Hampshire, so I'm like the triple threat. They all hate me up there. I'm from away, but I started a bagel shop because I've got legit bagels. I can emulate the New York bagel in New Hampshire. Without having to truck water up.
Well, yeah, because I've always heard it's the water or something, right?
Well, it is in the water, but it's not what people think. Honestly.
So you have a storefront?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. But it's on the horizon.
Yep. We're playing with it. Right now it's a pet project.
What's it going to be called?
Roly Holers.
Roly Holers.
Trademarked. I got my trademark from the USPTO the other day.
I love it.
And so we're just playing around with it because I want to have fun. You only go around this.
Yep.
You only go around this once, and it's something that I'm passionate about. It's something I love doing, and it's something that everybody in my house misses because we don't live in New Jersey anymore.
Yeah.
And the name actually came because all the bagels that we see in New Hampshire are just rolls with holes.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's hilarious.
So anyway, back to your question.
Well, the question is, so if you could give somebody else if there's anybody listening who's thinking about starting up a company, or they're right at that, or they have started it and they're in the first year or something, is there like maybe a top 3 sets of mistakes that you have made that you would give advice to people of avoid this, do this instead? What are just some fundamental things that you think are important for starting something up?
Well, the first thing is pricing, and this was something that I taught you.
Absolutely,
was work in volume. And this goes back to integrity. I'm not trying to pry every dollar out of every manufacturer that I talk to, because that will get you a project today, but it will not get you residual work tomorrow. And when you keep your prices effective and you're not busting people's budgets, they're going to want to come back for you for more work, and you've got an annuity client. So keep your pricing reasonable, and figure out what model will work for you to make money in volume. Not, if you can, in the same amount of time, make the same amount of money, but you're doing more projects, it's the same amount of effort.
And I want to interject here with Bob's point is that, in my opinion, the key to that is you have to automate part of that process.
Yes.
You have to streamline it, and that's the only way you can get it to the point where it can be volume-based.
Well, and that's it. That's exactly it. And I worked with Revolution Design very early on to develop a set of Revit tools that allowed me to build content very, 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 very quickly, thus very, very inexpensively. And I was able to pass that. Instead of taking that money for myself, I passed it on to the manufacturers. That's why I've worked with 800 of them, not 80 of them or 8, because I want to give them all a fair shake, and I don't like ripping people off because I don't like being ripped off.
Right.
So I'd say the number one thing is watch your pricing. Don't try to corner the market. Because that's there's capitalism. Bulls do well, bears do well, pigs get slaughtered. I think that's words to live by.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. 2, love what you do. If you're doing it for the money, stop doing it. You're not going to succeed, because now you're going to try to drive that price up because you think that it's worth this and think that it's worth that. But if you don't love and you're not passionate about it, go to work for somebody else. That's really when you're starting up a company, it should be something that you're excited about and that you absolutely love to do. Wow.
Is there a third? I kind of think that's it.
Don't let the company own you.
What does that mean?
Remember that you have a family. Remember that you have other responsibilities, because if you don't do that, then your ex-family will own half of your company.
That's a good point, and we won't get into any of that kind of stuff, but it's a good point, and I know exactly what he means by that. For me, when that part of it is you have to have discipline.
Yeah.
So you need to be, if you're not a morning person, become a morning person. I think that is so critical. Get up before everybody else gets up. It's quiet. You probably are. I'm the most productive from 5 a.m. to 7:30 a.m.
Amen. I'm the same between 5:30 and 7 a.m. and from about 4 to 6 p.m. also, because as I wind down, I don't know what it is, but something in my brain makes me very productive as I'm getting towards the end of the day, which really sucks because that's when my phone rings the most.
Yeah.
And that's when I got to the point where I started turning off my phone,
the interruptions,
turning off Slack, and just thinking. That's where I do my best. I do my best thinking first thing in the morning, and then I do my best production. I'm most efficient when I get into the very late afternoon. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm hungry.
Yeah, it could be. Or there's a goal at the end of the day where you're like, okay, I'm almost to the finish line,
right.
So I'm going to sprint now. Yeah. It might be that.
Look, I haven't really deconstructed that one too much, but I've noticed it's just something that I noticed.
Yeah.
That I get very, very, I'm super productive coming towards the end of the day.
Those are beautiful pieces of. I think those are things you just live by. Absolutely, I would back that up. All three of those 100%. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you the last two questions that I've been asking everybody else. 3D printing was expected to transform architecture and construction, but uptake of it has been slow. Once the technology has been adopted, how do you see architects adopting it, and will it usher back in the architect as master builder? Long pause.
I'm not buying any of that at all. I think 3D printing is great for rapid prototyping. I don't see it being anything more than making a fancy little model in the middle of the office, which is being replaced by things like Enscape and VR. Anyway, so no. I think.
Do you think buildings are just too complex in order for us to make that happen? I mean, because
no. Well, I don't see a reason for it. I mean, what First off, the polymers that we have, the polymers and resins, how photo stable are they? We don't know. So it's going to take decades of.
What about concrete printers? What do you think of that? I mean, honestly, you're giving me that look. I know that look, Bob.
Well, okay, so concrete flows by gravity, right?
Right.
Okay, so 3D printing works by printing. It's using more energy to print the concrete than it does to pour it down a chute.
Mm-hmm. So we framed our my hesitation with the whole thing is I go, look, I'm building a $3.2 million project right now. We framed everything in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Sticks are sticks.
Yeah.
It is automated in a sense already. In for 100 years, we've had the same kind of dimensional lumber. We've had the same kind of systems. The guys know what they're doing. You're already bringing a bunch of prefabricated pieces and then just snapping them together. Like, it's still very fast.
Right.
I think I would only disagree with you in the sense that it's maybe an architect can use it for a special piece of something, at some point. I don't know. But I don't think we're talking whole buildings. They're just too complex.
Yeah.
For us to.
Yeah, and maybe your IKEA home will have some of the connectors, and there may be parts, but honestly, I think CNC is more relevant than 3D printing is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, last one. It's been 10 years since the Great Recession. We already talked about that. And it seems like we are due for another one. What is one piece of advice you would give to a small firm architect or business owner as we near the end of this business cycle?
Automate. That's figure out where your fat is, and figure out how and what it takes to automate, and be prepared for it. You don't need to flip the switch right away, but basically it's your doomsday shelter, so that you don't need to shutter your doors. Learn from the mistakes that you may have experienced. For older firms, the ones that did experience that recession, learn from it.
Don't forget.
He who forgets is destined to remember.
Yeah.
Eddie Vedder.
Yeah. That's perfect. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being on Inside the Firm today.
Anytime.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Anytime.
It's always a pleasure to see you, buddy. Where can people, if people want to follow you, if people want to get in touch with your company, how can they get in hold of you?
SumexDesign.com. I don't really do much with the website because most of what I do is word of mouth. SumexDesign.com. At Sumex. I don't tweet much, but that's where I am. I go to most of the shows. Feel free to give me a call, 973-919-1980. I don't care. I'm very transparent. I'm very open, and I'm very open to business. So if somebody wants to call me and give me, interested in having me do some work, there's no job too small, no job too big.
Very cool. Awesome. Thanks again, buddy.
Anytime.
And now, a word from one of our sponsors.
The weather's beautiful, the pool is open, and the grill is on. It's summer, and the last thing you want to do is spend a long day in the office wrestling with broken files and archaic websites. ARCAT can help you save time by putting all the building products you need into one powerful search engine. ARCAT.com isn't just a list of products. However, they also host the product's technical data, like BIM and CAD files, for you to download and use in your project. To top it off, it's free to use as much as you want. You don't even need to register. So stop watching the sun go down in the office, trying to find the right information. Build better content with ARCAT.com. That's ARCAT, ARCAT.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Firm from the AIA 2019 convention in Las Vegas. I'm here with a fellow alumni I've been wanting to meet for a very long time. We're friends on Facebook. We always like each other's stuff. Is Kristi W. Hanson, and she owns KHA Architects. Can you tell me, I think one of the things I've always wanted to ask you is, how did you get into architecture, right? You're a North Dakota native, correct?
Correct.
And then why did you get into architecture, and how did you start your firm?
I got into architecture mainly because from the time I was in 7th grade, I always knew that buildings interested me, and if I saw something on the outside, I wanted to know what it looked like and how it worked on the inside. So architecture really was my passion at that point in time, and I just, my mom tried to talk me out of it, and I just wasn't going to let her do it. And
what did she want you to be?
She wanted me to be a graphic artist.
Oh, okay.
Because I used to love to paint and draw pictures and all of that, but I knew that I'd be a starving artist if I did that.
Yeah, exactly. But you already do. You do graphic artists. I think architecture is part of that, right? I mean, our drawings are art, aren't they? Our renderings
for sure.
are art. Yeah.
And I think a lot of, certainly the architecture that we do has a lot of art aspects to it, which I think is really fun. So I sort of get to live both lives.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you start your firm? How did that all happen?
Well, I moved out to California a month after I graduated from college, and it's kind of a cool story. Back when I graduated, not when you did, there was no such thing as the internet. I moved to California in 1987.
1987. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you moved out there.
Yep. And I got a job with a small firm, and I worked for him for 2 years, then I worked for another guy for a year and a half, and then I went to work for a developer. Doing all kinds of different things. I had to approve everybody's projects that, these homes that were going to be built. Was in charge of, $30-40 million worth of my own projects. And then...
so were you the architect for him, basically?
No. So we would hire architects to do work. At the time. So I was just kind of oversaw all of their work.
Yeah. How did you fall into work with the developer?
I was teaching at the College of the Desert, which is a little community college, and they have a pre-architecture program, which is a feeder for Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Uh-huh.
And the guy who was in charge of that program actually heard about this job, and he's the one who introduced me to the guy and ended up getting hired.
Yeah. That's a lot of responsibility.
It was, but it was fun, and I think it taught me... Number one, how to talk to all kinds of different people, because if you had to have your project approved and we would go into our development meetings, I had to have talked to the civil engineer, I had to talk to the golf course guys, I had to talk to all these different people ahead of time so that they would buy into my project at those meetings instead of, coming up with excuses of why you shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Did it give you any better perspective as an architect, seeing the development and the money side of things and how all of that leads up to... I mean, there's all of that kind of planning work, risk, and everything else, whereas... Because sometimes, we'll get pulled into projects and there's none of that, really. I mean, yes, there's a budget, but, we don't see the struggle that happens and where the pinch points occur.
Yeah, I think it really gives you an overview of how a whole development is built and all the different pieces that were necessary in order for a lot to be built, and the approvals that you have to go through at the city, which are, similar but different than the ones that we do, I think, individually as architects. And certainly the money side of it was really quite interesting. And then also sort of understanding the goals of the overall development and what they want to be became an interesting aspect also.
How long did you work for the developer then? Before then finally, then did you, right after that, pull the trigger on...
Well, I like to say that I got fired. And
sometimes that's the best thing to happen to people, though.
It was
right?
the best thing,
Yeah.
actually. It was, in fact, if I could find the guy who made it happen, I'd give him a hug now.
Yeah.
So it was a downturn early on in the 2000s and
Early 2000s?
early 2000s
.com
or
boom?
late 90s, I think. Okay. And so my position was basically eliminated.
Oh, okay.
And so I say I was fired, but I wasn't. But truly, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because I really had no intention of ever starting my own company.
You're serious?
I'm serious.
Wow.
I wanted another developer job because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
But there were none to have. And so, but I had gotten my license, and so I was set. And then I had a lot of people calling me saying, can you do this? Can you do that? And the next thing I knew, I was in business.
That's amazing. So you just sort of fell into it, and yeah.
Yep.
How many employees do you have now?
There
how big is your
are
firm?
8 of us, but we just brought in 2 interns from NDSU.
Very cool.
Yes.
Yeah, you got after me for not we're not going after those interns, but we're going to next spring for sure.
Okay.
As long as the
You better.
As long as the economy still keeps going the way it's got to go. That's amazing. That's how we started our firm too. Was we both got laid off. It was a great recession, and then we did it right. I always had the intent. Alex and I always had the intention of doing it.
Oh, really?
And like when we did the post graduation little get together party was on the top of the Hodo in downtown Fargo, and it was me and him and his family and my family were around, and everybody's kind of joking like, oh yeah, Gore and Cayko, they'll start their firm in 10 years, and then all of a sudden we started it way before we wanted to. And just kind of drank water from a fire hose. So, can you tell us any of those stories? Like, how about is there if somebody gets into a position like you did, where you're just sort of falling into it? Is there any lessons that you can remember that you could give somebody who's going to start their own firm from the beginning to not make any mistakes? You're going to make mistakes, but is there some where you're just like, man, there was that one thing. If I could go back in time, I would do it differently.
I think that's hard, but I think the biggest thing that I would tell somebody is that be willing to risk it, and don't be so set in your ways. And, that people very often will say to me, when I'm talking to students and that kind of thing, what's your 10-year plan? Or what's your 5-year goals? And I said, quite frankly, if I had live my life by setting goals, I think I wouldn't be where I am now. I'm more of a fly by the seat of the pants girl, and I'm sort of open to all kinds of opportunities. And when they come, you have to be willing to jump on them, even if they scare the crap out of you. And so be okay with being afraid is probably the biggest thing, I think, when you're starting your own company. And don't be afraid to ask people who are in the industry for help, because I think we all want to help each other, right?
Like another architect?
Yeah, like if somebody said, I don't know what to do. And in fact, I had somebody who worked for me who has now started her own company. And she was worried about it. And I just said, look, it's going to be hard. And these are the challenges that you're going to have. But if you want to do it, now's the time, right?
Right. Better now than never, right?
Right.
Yeah, just jump into it.
Yep.
Exactly. That's awesome. How about this? What do you do? Do you have any advice to share with somebody is a small firm and they just started out and they can't afford to hire anybody to do any marketing or anything for that? Is there any what could they do on a shoestring budget? Was there anything that you did right away? I mean, you had a great network as it was, So was it something along those lines where while you're with another firm, be building a network that you can go back to?
Yeah, I think just get the word out that you have started your company, that you're willing to do anything to begin with, to get your name known, make contacts, go to the Chamber of Commerce, meet people, wherever you can do those things, I think, within your community, and each of them I think are a little different. But it's really like, I don't advertise. I haven't advertised. I mean, I put things in magazines basically because I want to support the magazines themselves. But all of our work is word of mouth.
Word of mouth, referrals, yeah.
Yeah.
When you first started, was there any work you did turn down? Or did you kind of just say, no, I'm going to take it all until I feel comfortable and financially to say no?
My prerequisite for doing any work, and I don't care if it was when I first started or now, is we have to have fun doing it or I'm not interested.
I love that.
Yeah. In fact, I literally have sat across the table from people and said, I don't know that I'm a good match for you. And they're like, no, we promise we will be your most fun client.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like setting them up to be successful, right?
Yep. I know. Yeah. One of the pitches I always give people, and just so everybody knows, your main shtick is custom residential high end, right? Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So we do a lot of custom residential too. And when I meet with those clients, whoever the partners are, it's guys, you have your marriage. Just know that this is going to be a marriage for a while. It's going to we're sort of dating, and it's got to be fun. And we might only do this. You might only build a house once in your lifetime. So let's not have a bad time.
Right.
I think that's like sage advice people can pick up and take when they go off with their clients.
Well, and I think especially custom residential, because it's so personal.
Yeah.
And, and people want to just get so amped up about it. And it's just like, look, I don't know how many times I've said to a client, we are not doing heart surgery here. Whatever we're doing, it can be fixed, or it can be, we can change it, or we can do whatever we want. Let's just not freak out about it.
Yeah, and soften the problem.
Yeah.
That's exactly what clients want at the end of the day too. Is they just want to be. They are really looking to us to be reassure them and calm their nerves. This is because it could be even if it's an addition, it could be the biggest thing they ever build in their lives and one of the most stressful things. Right, like
for sure.
Doing anything construction wise. I think there's some article that's been floating around like. There's divorce, there's losing a spouse, there's building a house. Like those top three things that could be an issue.
Well, and I think that, the other thing I try and tell people when I meet with them, I said, my most successful projects and my happiest clients are the ones that were very clear about what they wanted and then went away and let us do it.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, very cool. So speaking of having fun, how do you foster that in your firm for culture? Because at our firm, culture is everything. I mean, I want our employees, including Alex and ourselves, to go, oh my God, it's Friday at 5. That was a quick week, and we had fun the whole time. What is there any kind of activities or things that you guys do on a routine basis, like traditions or anything?
We obviously celebrate everybody's birthdays. We celebrate anniversaries.
What, marriage anniversaries, stuff like that?
No.
Like,
working anniversaries.
Oh, cool!
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah. So every year that you've been there, we have we have drinks and apps, and you get a lot of times they get to choose what they want. Their birthdays, we always bring in lunch for everybody and that kind of thing. And then, a lot of Fridays we have beer 30 or wine 40 or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, other than that, we're so busy working, and I'm not sure that we have time to even blink.
Yeah, that's good. Yep. Things are good right now, for sure. Yeah,
unbelievable.
Everybody's eating really well right now.
Yes.
I'm very thankful for it, too. There's three more questions that I've kind of been asking everybody, but one that kind of comes to mind that's prompted by these three questions is, like, how did the Great Recession affect you? When you did, was it, what did you do to make sure the boat kept going, on the water and staying afloat?
Well, we were as big as, I think, 10 or 12 at that point. And I had two pretty senior people on my staff that I hung on to as long as I possibly could, and ultimately ended up having to let them go, which is the most horrible thing you have to do, I think, as an employer, for reasons that they can't control, right?
Or you.
Yeah. And then it got to the point where, basically I wasn't taking a salary. My sister wasn't taking much of a salary or any. And so then it got to a point where I called everybody in and I said, look, here's the deal. And we sat around the table in our office and I said, we can do one of two things. I said, I can either pick somebody else who has to go and lose their job. I said, or we can go down to 4 days a week as a staff. And they chose the 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And it worked. And we did that. I don't remember how long we did it, but we did it until we got through it. And then everything picked back up.
Yeah. Yeah. At one point in my life, I had it in my head that I wish those employers that laid me off would have done that.
Yeah.
But like we talked about earlier, I'm so glad they didn't.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It was one of the worst days of my life too, because I won the Peter F. McKinsey Award.
Yeah.
Graduated top of the class. Worked my butt off.
Yeah.
Grew up in from a very poor family, Native American, all these things, and then to get laid off like that, it was just horrible.
Well, and I mean, isn't it funny how it's so devastating? Like I remember that, going to a movie in the middle of the afternoon and coming out and I was bawling because I'm just like,
oh yeah,
oh my God, my life has no purpose, right? And amazingly, now I look back on that and go, God, I wish I would have enjoyed that time off
instead of wallowing.
Yeah,
maybe there you go. That's a good piece of advice for people.
Yeah,
just try to enjoy it if you can.
Exactly.
I guess. Okay, so I'm on to the 3 questions I've been asking everybody. Okay. With the exponential growth of technology we've seen in the last century, it seems that automation is inevitable. Are you at all worried that we will lose our profession to automation?
No, because somebody still has to program the stuff to do it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. So maybe we become programmer architects.
Yeah.
But I still think people are going to just want to be face-to-face too, don't you think?
Oh,
right? They want to have fun.
Absolutely. And they want to feel connected to whatever they're doing. And, as much as we use Alexa and all that kind of stuff, the bottom line is it's not personal.
Yeah, at all. Okay. 3D printing was expected to transform architecture and construction, but uptake of it has been slow. Once the technology has been adopted, how do you see architects adopting it, and will it usher back in the architect as master builder?
I haven't really given that a whole lot of thought. I think.
Would you use it if you had a 3D? Would you move into that realm where we're tired of this subcontractor screwing up? We're going to pour the foundation with our machine.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, some of the more complex forms that we do, I think it would be really wonderful to be able to have that option, right?
Yeah.
The curving roofs and, that kind of thing. I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would give even if the architect didn't become it didn't leapfrog them into being like the builder. If they were part of the builder, right? So then if the builder looks at a set of plans and he goes, he just kind of drools over like a big curvy, swervy something, and you're like, don't worry, we got it.
Yeah.
We can take care of that. I think that would empower the architects.
Well, and I think even from a standpoint of using it even as a greater tool, for instance, we can model it in the computer, but you still need somebody to implement it in the way that you really envision it in reality. And, you can fly through it, but if we could actually, I know we can because we've done it recently, but 3D print the thing, hand it to them and say, okay, now here is what we're looking for, that we can officially build it out of wood or glass or
I like that.
Whatever it is that we're going to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, I want it to happen.
I do too.
We're tech people.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. It's been 10 years since the Great Recession, and it seems like we are due for another one.
Mm-hmm.
What is one piece of advice you would give to a small firm architect or business owner as we near the end of this business cycle?
Save money. Stash it away. Put it into an account that you don't touch so that you have it as a rainy day.
Yeah, because then you were able to not take the salary, right, and keep everybody going. And that's pretty profound that you did that. I think that's very big of you and forward thinking as an owner, right? Of we last, right? I mean, if you're the owner, that's how you should tackle it. Is right. I eat last, everybody else eats first. It's sort of especially if it's a small firm like ours. It's a family at the end of the day. You can't kind of get away from that. Those people, you're working with them every single day. You probably see them sometimes more than your spouse sometimes, right, in a week.
Well, for sure I do, because mine lives in Fargo.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on Inside the Firm today, Kristi.
Well, you're welcome.
I'm so glad I finally got to meet you.
Likewise.
Where can people follow you and get in touch with you or find your work?
KristiHanson.com is our website, and I'm on Kristi W. Hanson, I think, on Instagram.
Awesome.
I think.
Oh, last thing. Can you give us a little pitch about why is it so important to give back to your university, your alma mater?
A little pitch, because I could give you a big pitch on that.
Then give us a big one.
Okay. I think the thing for me is that I recognize that NDSU was the foundation for setting me up to be a success later. And it took a while for me to realize that. But once I did and came back and started giving back, you become so much more fulfilled, I think, as a person when you're helping other young people be successful that, maybe it would have helped me had I had the opportunity to have scholarships, that kind of thing. But I think even more than that, I actually get more out of the time that I spend at NDSU on the advisory board and then on the foundation board, because I've met people like you, like other architects from around the country that are fellow NDSU alums who I've been able to learn from that I never otherwise would have had that opportunity. So I'm a firm believer also that whatever you give comes back tenfold. And so that's the first dollars I spend. So always give back to your alma mater.
There you go. You heard it here. Take that to heart, give back, and don't expect anything. And it does come back. I'm a firm believer in that. You put out there and it comes back.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now, a word from one of our sponsors.
Hey everybody, if you are trying to learn Revit, I think you should learn from yours truly, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko. We have a website called RevitRocketship.com. We've been training university students, other professionals, our own staff for many, many, many years, and we made it available online at RevitRocketship.com. And what's great about it is that it's broken down into 5 to 7 minute chunks, plus or minus on some of them. Teaches you everything from families to a whole project base. And one of the differentiators, I think, there's actually two major ones. One is we're an actual firm, F9productions.com, that does a lot of work. So we are implementing practices that are true. And what that means is that we're modeling like it gets built. We're doing our walls a little bit different. You'll see in the videos of why we do it, but it actually works out in the end to create a better model. We've trained a lot of people, so this is not our first go around. And the other thing too is that you get our template. You get the actual template that we use, hone, develop, and improve every year in that system. So it's for free. So if you were starting a residential project, you'd start off on that. It'd have everything set up the way that we like, the way that helps you go faster, build cooler things, and be more awesome. So check that out, RevitRocketship.com.